have time on Monday's show. There was too much going on to talk about the news that Kian Sullivan has retired. Gerald, start with you. One of my favourite players, like a class act, kind of is how you would describe Kian Sullivan. I've had the misfortune of marking him in my latter years, and it wasn't a good experience. God help anybody. He just had the speed, he had the brain, he had the athleticism, he had the fitness. You know, he was the total package.
No, I tell you, you'd play him anywhere from 2 to 9. He just had a superb football brain, Wooly, and like you say, that athleticism. If he was marking you, he was always touch tight, and the other occasion a forward might get away. He had so much pace to actually turn and make up the extra couple of yards that within a second or two he'd be back on you. He's just incredibly sticky, and I think in the 2011 All-Ireland final he was in marking Gooch in corner back, and 2013 started midfield then against Mayo, but just a super guy and a super talent, and he's given great service to Dublin, and no doubt he tried to give a few more years to Kilmacud Crokes. And obviously mentioned briefly off air seeing Crokes by Vincent's in the Dublin Championship last year, and I seen the couple of games after that, and I thought Kian was playing some of his best football that I'd seen in a couple of seasons, certainly for the club, and he looked to have gotten a bit of a break from those niggling injuries, and I never suffered from the old hamstrings myself. I wasn't fast enough, but fast guys like Kian, they're so explosive that on occasion they're going to pick up little twinges. Unfortunately for him, he probably picked up more than most of the guys, but the fact that he played for so long is a credit to his work away from the pitch to strengthen up the legs to ensure that he got the best out of themselves. But 8 All-Irelands and how many All-Stars, and he'd be a big loss to the Dublin team.
Yeah, he definitely will. I don't know how many Leinsters. You kind of run out of fingers counting the Leinsters. I'm sure he has. Like the big thing for him, Brendan, was the 2014. Lost to Donegal, and Jim Gavin had to go back to the drawing board, and he identified Kian Sullivan as the man that was going to be a sweeper. And Dublin have never looked back. They actually haven't lost the championship game since then. And Kian Sullivan's role in that shouldn't be underestimated, just because the last 2 or 3 years he hasn't been a starter.
Yeah, Jim Gavin sold his football and soul to the Jim McGuinness devil.
Not back then.
No, listen, Willie, there's something about Kian, and I think he represents the modern Dublin player, and he was one of the first, I think, just his ease of playing the game. Listen, there's no doubt he was a class player, and there's many class player Dublin players went before him, but they hadn't got maybe that temperament and that just the belief in his own ability. It just looked like he was always playing the game in a certain cruise control. And you only get certain players that do that. They come into the game, they just look like they're never going 100%. They've always got the game figured out a wee bit quicker than the rest of us. And Kian was one of them. And you're right, his role in shoring up that defence of Dublin and organising Dublin's defence as well. And it just was part, as I say, that new wave of Dublin footballer that wasn't going to be fazed by anything and just became so hard to beat. But yeah, what a player, what a career.
Yeah, he was the leader of the backline too, and he often used to, let his man off sweep, because Dublin didn't bring back a forward to sweep. It was Keane's decision on the field to drop off and sweep, and he'd often tell someone else, pick up my man. I've seen with James McCarthy before, suddenly his man's been marked and he's able to sweep, and that was him making those. That wasn't Jim Gavin shouting into him. Kian O'Sullivan was making those decisions on the field, and I think for a few years he definitely was the leader of the backline.
No, definitely. The guy who plays 6 on most teams, has to be a strong communicator, and like Brendan mentioned, to be able to read and play the game at ease like Kian did, and his understanding of sensing danger in the full backline and being able to drop off, and again the likes of a midfielder or someone like that coming in and picking up the centre forward, that allowed Kian then to pick up so much breaks and even cut out a lot of balls where the balls were even played in. He was very good at getting into the right position, and then his athleticism then allowed him then to push back out again. The play slowed up. If he had to get back out the field, he was just well able to push back out. But the other thing he actually had as well is the amount of secondary balls he would pick up around the edge of the D. His ability to kick past the ball out of the defence over the first line of attack and get Dublin going on the forward foot, the front foot. he did that so many times, and he's probably slightly unorthodox in how he kicks the ball, but
Does a
extremely
punt a lot,
accurate.
doesn't he?
He doesn't know. He likes an old punch,
A
you know.
Paddy O'Shea punt.
Yeah, but it goes straight, like, you know, and sets Dublin on the front foot so many times, and that's another huge part of his game. On top of the defensive element of it, a lot of our attacks would have come from him. Getting us going from head up forward football.
Well, he was,
so.
Ger, as well as that, the Dublin guys, you know, we had this thing in Ulster there. If you had a successful team, you had to kind of hate them. They made you hate them. And this Dublin team, and Kian was like that. That's why everything that Dublin do, you admire it. They never kind of rub anybody's nose on it. They just go about their business so well. And Kian was like that. All the guys are like, they seem like all top lads as well. They've basically said, right, we're going to go out and play football our way. We have no need to stick an elbow in you or put you over the line. And something that used to be in G, particularly maybe I was so used to it here in Ulster, but he was part of that same level. You couldn't say a bad word about these guys. You just had to admire the skill that they had.
Yeah, and probably the biggest compliment I can pay him is that he wears his moustache an awful lot better than me. You know how well this looks on me. So, like, I mean, that's probably the nicest thing we could say about him.
But he was actually telling me he's seen you wearing it, and that inspired him.
He's had it a while.
He's had it a while.
Yeah, listen, he's a handsome man. So, look, I mean,
good-looking fella. He has everything.
Yeah, he just has it all. We should hate him, Brendan. I don't know why we don't.
Well, before
we won't say it on air.
and before you move off it, a lot of what Kilkenny did when Kilkenny got nearly won 5 in a row, you know, Dublin certainly in their path, and definitely Jim then as well. We would have been inspired and admired the way the Kilkenny guys held themselves. That if you wanted to mix it, they mix it. If you want to play hurling, we play hurling. But either way, we're going to beat you. That's where Brian Coley got the lads, and that's something our generation, when we started off, that's something we would have looked up to as well, you know, but which is very much evident in how the lads play now.
Yeah,
you know?
well, they've definitely done it. They've definitely emulated them. There's no doubt about that. It's worked out. The handicap this weekend, lads, we're not going to preview the match here or anything like that, but the handicap in the Dublin-Wexford game, I think this is a record. It's -24. Like, holy shit, Brendan. Like, I mean, this is just... And the hilarious thing about this, and it's not really hilarious, it's depressing, is that Dublin will probably beat that -24, because when it's at 18, it's at 20, it's at 22. Generally, Dublin cover those huge handicaps. It's amazing. Usually, you think they've no chance at half time because the other team comes out fighting, and they eventually wear them down, and goals go in late, and they always cover. And Shane Roach, the Wexford manager, was saying it'll be a great occasion, and we've a lot of young players that when we met said we want to pit ourselves against the best. I can just picture the final whistle going in Wexford Park. Wexford have been hammered. And that's no disrespect to Wexford, because Dublin will hammer them. And all the Wexford fans will run out onto the field, run past their own players, and go to Kieran Kilkenny and Conor Callan for their autographs. Like, I mean, Dublin have just got to this level, Brendan, which is, we know it's kind of, it's gone to crazy levels in Leinster, but it's nearly worrying full stop.
Yeah, well, I guess, you know, this subject keeps coming up, you know, about the powers that be and where things is at. And it's a massive, massive question, Willie, and I just think it's not going to stop. If anything, it's going to get worse. You know, it's just, people will say then, well, what about teams like Sligo winning a Connacht and Fermanagh getting into the Ulster final, and, you know, teams, you know, having a go at a provincial, obviously tipped last year, Cavan. I think last year was such a one-off. It kind of holds that argument a bit. I just can't see those counties in the next 10 years getting near that. And I just think it's pulling away. That's why I think the bigger teams really, as much as we have to try and encourage all the weaker counties, it just looks like, well, at this point, part of me thinks, you know what, let the big teams play each other to hell, and try and promote football as best we can, because we keep almost giving off about the big teams for what they're doing, but that's not going to stop. And there doesn't seem any little way of stopping it. So you're right, at the weekend, it's just a foregone conclusion. And for teams now playing Dublin, it's a bit of a big day for them. And as you say, to pit their wits against the best. If you look at even last week, Willie, as much as Down rank outsiders, there's still a wee thought there. Could they give Donegal a game? There was a couple of passages of play in the game they would, you know. And there's other provincial teams where there will be a wee bit of a game in it, but just for Dublin and Leinster, there's none of that.
I was going to say, it's amazing if you think back to Dublin and Wexford. We had a nice little rivalry for a couple of seasons in Leinster.
The noughties, yeah.
And certainly 2009 and 2011, we pipped them in the Leinster final. Anthony Masterton just had a
2011 was it?
I think it could have been 2011, and there was a semi-final, quarter-final, maybe 2009 as well, where Wexford kind of had us under Jason Ryan was manager and did a nice crop of players. And I bumped into one of the Wexford guys last week doing something else, and we were chatting about it, and he said when the footballers were going well there, the hurlers weren't going so great. I know the hurlers are going great, and the footballers are obviously in Division 4, but that a lot of the stronger hurlers ended up playing football under Jason Ryan when they were going well, and now most of those guys, or most of the decent dual guys, are going back playing hurling because of the attraction of winning a Liam McCarthy with Davy Fitz, which is probably a challenge to those dual counties and even knowing a bit about the club scene down there. I think the 12 senior clubs, football and hurling, and they could have 8 or 9 dual players in each club on the starting 15, which makes it very difficult to actually excel and get to the next level, because again, as we all know, it's very hard to progress and become elite at both codes, given how far the likes of Dublin and Kerry have brought the game.
Yeah, they definitely have. I think even some Wexford players would be looking at Dublin players going, wow, and looking to swap jerseys with them after the game. Like, it has got to that level. We were talking about one superstar with Dublin. You're just up the road from Stephen Cluxton. What's going on with him? Because Kieran Kilkenny said he was back. Mick Galvin said that he was coming back, and there's constant speculation that he's gone because he played a league game with Parnells during the week and he's not in the squad for this weekend.
Yeah, Clucko, you obviously know him as well, Willie, from your time there. So a wonderful character, a wonderful guy.
Contrary character.
A contrary character, and he plays outfield.
More contrary than me, which is
more contrary than you. That'd be a great podcast, the two of you, whenever he retires. You get good viewership for that.
He does no media, never mind doing me. There's no chance. I know,
but I don't know is the answer, but what I do know of Clucko is that he more than likely would have made a decision for me at the start of the season to not leave Desi in the lurch, but I'm sure Desi knows exactly what's going on, and whatever game there.
So is your take that he's back? My take is that he's back.
My take is that he's back, but I actually honestly don't know, but knowing his character, I think he would have stepped away quietly over the Christmas, as opposed to leaving it go this late and having so much been talked about him, because he doesn't like that either.
Well, he doesn't like that either. But then again, it's funny things. Some of the things he does makes you talk about him a bit more, like not doing the celebration around in 11 and not going on the Late Show, and it's all to keep a low profile. But what it actually happens, is that people talk about you way more. So it's a strange one.
Was Paul Scholes not like that for United for years, and then? Obviously, when he
then went into media.
You
could get him as a pundit.
You could get him as a pundit.
You were on a show.
Cluxton might start his own podcast. Well,
you're under pressure.
You were on a rival. You were on a rival show recently, Brendan. You're doing listen. You're all over the place. You're in demand.
Give me a contract. Give me a contract.
You were
on. Never want that from me. Let's be honest.
You were on with David Brady anyway, and this is one of the most David Brady things I've ever seen. David Brady says, "Word on the street." This lad's bluffing completely. Word on the street. This lad lives in Castleknock. Anyways, word on the street is that Cluxton is gone, and the very next day, Kieran Kilkenny announced he was back training. I thought it was a classic. Did he fill you in on any more of this word on the street afterwards, Brendan?
It's funny when Brady says something again. He comes with a very real authority.
You
believe him. I think that's his point. And I got sucked in. I was like, well, Brady must know something there. He must know what it is. You say the next day, no, he doesn't. He knows no, and he wouldn't mind me saying that either.
Yeah.
Well, you see, as you know yourselves as former players, like it is, and the game that we're obviously involved in here doing the punditry, but you don't like asking guys you played with direct questions, because as a player coming up to games, you didn't want to be hanging out with fellas who were going to torment you about the match, because you just wanted to switch off and actually get a bit of a breather. So in the same way, none of the guys, and certainly myself, will go and ask him directly what's the story. And then Clucko being Clucko, he's not going to tell anyone either, bar his missus. He probably didn't even tell her either. But I'm sure Desi Farrell knows what's going on,
Right, okay. Yeah. Well, do you think Desi would have told us? Yeah, I think he's back. I don't think there's anything to talk about here. I think he's back.
I think he's back.
He's not going to come into the squad after only coming back a week and push the young sub-goalie. Is it Shields that played the
Michael Shields there and Evan Comerford as well.
Comerford's going to start.
Yeah.
But I think Cluxton would be honourable enough to go, here, hang on. And he might even say to Mick Galvin, who wants him on the squad, hang on, I'm only back a week. I'm not going to take one of those young lads.
Yeah.
I'll be training the next couple of weeks,
Yeah.
and I'll go back in then. That's my reading of what's going on.
I would agree with that, yeah.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. So I want to talk about Ryan O'Donoghue, lads. This fella's a bit refreshing now. So we were wondering who's going to take the freeze in Cillian O'Connor's absence, and Ryan O'Donoghue put his hand up and told James Horan, I want that job. Now, I loved that straight away.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So he went on the freeze, he takes them for his club, but he used to box. And often we hear about, because he was in the media this week, often we hear about, the commitment players are making and all these kind of things. And when he was in 6th class, he used to get up at 6 a.m. in Belmullet, running miles before school. His father would be in the car, like those old school movies with the lights on in the dark, and he's running. And he only ate plain chicken and dry pasta, no sauce. Just completely dedicated to boxing, Brendan, and coming into Gaelic football now, and his teammates slagging him because he actually doesn't have a palate for some sauce on his pasta and chicken. I don't know what point I'm making here.
That sounds horrible, Willie. I don't know. Just plain pasta and chicken. What is the need? Hey, surely he's got enough room burning off carbs there. I remember seeing Michael Phelps' diet there years ago at the Olympics, and he was eating pizza and donuts flat to the board because he was training so hard. So, yeah, it sounds like a wee bit of a Rocky Balboa story, doesn't it? I think he did a bit of boxing, didn't he, as well? So he might be able to handle himself in a wee fisticuff, say, if it kicks off there. But yeah, great story. I kind of love that, Willie, because I guess was his life, his trajectory, I always feel that people sometimes, I kind of half fell into football by mistake a wee bit in terms of, and I never played underage for Donegal or that. So it kind of came to me and everything just happened all of a sudden, But for guys like that, it's as if they just, their whole life had dreamed. I mean, Michael Murphy would have been like that, you just knew that this was going to be his life and his way of going. So fantastic story. As you said, it took a lot of BLs to say, listen, I'm going to hit the freeze. Of course, hitting the freeze against Sligo, bit different maybe to Croke Park on a big day. The test will come down the road, and as we all know, we freeze that is the metal that you need, and that's something obviously Cillian O'Connor had in spades and experience. So surely there's tougher tests for him coming round, and he's going to have to keep his nerve. But listen, I think with stories like that, you can get behind lads like that because you know that it's heart and soul. They love that jersey and that play as much as any fan could ever want them to.
Yeah, a nice little interview. I love the way he put his hand up, and I'll be keeping my eye out for him more. I like him as a player. He had a great first half in last year's All-Ireland final. But I wanted to talk about diet there, actually, because, I'm starting to get a bit paranoid that I'm getting very old-fashioned. I'm 43 now, so, I am nearly old-fashioned. Well, maybe a few more years. But I think diet's overdone. Now, I remember, say the O'Shea brothers, they would have sworn on a fry the morning of an All-Ireland. Didn't do them any harm. John Milan would have sworn. I think his routine used to be to get a snack box the night before. Now then, I remember when I worked with Off the Ball, Mossy Quinn telling us, now this wasn't playing with Dublin, this was playing with Vincent's, and he was joking after, I think he won a Leinster, and Mossy says, I'm going to get chicken wings now, or I had chicken wings last night because I have been off them. And I was thinking, holy shit, chicken wings are healthy in my eyes. That would be something that I wouldn't really even be avoiding. But so Mossy's obviously an extreme end of scale. But what's your thoughts on it, Gerald? I don't know. Would you deprive yourself chicken wings to play better, or is this a psychological thing that you go, I've sacrificed all this, therefore, I deserve to play well?
Well, black and white, to look at the benefits of eating well and your body's ability to adapt to the stress of training and gym. The cleaner you eat, the more adaptations you get. If you're a Mark O'Shea, a Dara O'Shea, a Tomas O'Shea with multiple All-Irelands, and you're playing in a wonderful team, of course you can probably throw in your sneaky fry. But when you're trying to get to the next step and you're stepping onto the field and it's knockout championship and it's in Croke Park, in the back of your head that I've done everything that's been asked of me to get the best out of myself. And the confidence that comes from that then
so it's a
is
psychological
huge.
thing then.
So at that point, it's psychological when you're trying to break through or even trying to break into the team, that you just have to watch yourself because you need to give yourself every single advantage. But from a physiological perspective, obviously eating well is far better than eating crap after games. And even when you look at beer and alcohol, obviously a couple of beers after a stressful game is no harm, just to kind of relieve the stress. But when I started off playing Leinster championships, we were going to beer for 2 or 3 days after a quarter final, And now the lads would barely drink a bottle or two after a Leinster quarter final because of the level they've obviously gotten to,
Yeah.
So yeah, your diet is hugely important, Wooly. And again, depending on the type of personality you are, if you're someone that is what would you call it, very kind of linear in their thinking, that, and if you don't have everything laid out and eating exactly the right amount of food, the dietitian told you to eat, I might have a bad game here. Whereas certainly my personality, I didn't overthink it too much, but relatively well when I was playing. But other guys, it depends on the extremity of the character as well. But if you're trying to break through, knowing that you've done everything that's been asked of you, there's no better feeling taken to the pitch.
Yeah, no, and I completely accept it. Now, I'm not trying to make an argument here, Brendan, that you eat bloody bad food all week. Like, I'm talking about eating well, refueling after training, doing all the right things, eating your veg, fruit, carbohydrates, all that, eating well. But Jesus, at the weekend, if you can't have a pizza and you can't have a chipper when you want one, on top of doing everything right, like that, I think those players, Brendan, might potentially be taking it to extreme levels.
It's been drummed in, Billy. I think it's part of this whole mindset of being pushed down and elite. You have to. And a fella would almost feel guilty for eating a pizza now, which seems absolutely crazy. Well, and the thought of pints, this thing of having a few pints after the match, the way now that's kind of been outlawed is an absolute joke. When you look at other sports doing it that are at a professional level, and people do it. I mean, look at rugby, for example. They still go and enjoy their nights out and have their pints, and there's no talk about it. You think of the famous story of Jack Child, remember Harry Ramsday's or whatever you call it, the chipper there, the big fish and chip challenge. He took them on the night before a game. He obviously, Charlton's coming from a time view where that wouldn't matter. I remember Finn Harp stopping for fish and chips before League of Ireland games in Carrickmacross heading to Dublin. At that point, I had played with Donegal, and I got very obsessive with diet, really obsessive. And looking back at it, I hate that I did, because we had no dietitians around. I remember looking at the back of like pasta and looking at carbs, and I just equaled that to energy. And I thought, if I have energy, I'm going to play well. And honestly, that's so stupid. I was eating pasta for breakfast and things. It was just making me a bit ill. And I remember heading we were heading to Clonus this day, and I'd like a protein shake, like an energy drink thing. And I didn't even want the boys to see me drinking it, because they'd be like, what's that? To be annoying you. And I remember shaking this thing up and downing it. So we got on McGuinness's bus, and if you've ever went from Donegal town to Clonus, well, you talk about it, and I'm bouncing. All I can feel is this I nearly threw up 2 or 3 times. This was going to play maybe an Ulster semi-final or final. And looking back at it now, I'm just thinking, God, I did not need that stress in my mind about diet. But look at it now. It's all mapped out for players, and but as you say, well, there's a balance there with everything. We've definitely lost the balance in terms of what we're expecting from our players. Hermits, diet, all that's gone a wee bit too far out the other way. To see at the end of it, well, it still comes down to your fitness and your skills. And if you're diet, or if you have a few beers at the right time, surely there's a place for that.
Yeah. A snack box never stopped a man kicking a pint. If we'll break it down to a real stupid supporter level. But that's the thing, though, Ger. And even the rugby professional setups will balance the benefits from having a few pints for team camaraderie, team spirit. Obviously, like, it does have a physiological downside, but these are fit kind of athletes. So it will have a small downside physiologically, but it'll have a huge benefit, camaraderie, team spirit, and all those things. And they weigh it up and go, this is much more important than this.
So, and Brendan's probably touched on it, and you mentioned there too, is depending on your starting points. So some squads are doing too much drinking, and some squads probably aren't doing enough drinking. But because monkey see, monkey do, and with a lot of the elite teams, and even towards the end of my own career, I was drinking a couple of pints of Smithwick's or pints of Guinness in the hotel afterwards, or wherever you're having your grub. And a few of the younger lads coming through were just having a few like Heineken's little bottles, and they might have one or two of them. And by the time they finish their first bottle, I'm on my fourth pint, And but then, fellas, you're kind of looking around, and the competition creeps in, and then you're watching what everyone else is doing. So, have we got it wrong? Yes, I think, but it's unfortunately because we're not professional, and because guys, it's again, it's all relative to where you're coming from as a player trying to break into a team, and then it's all relative where you're coming as a team trying to break into Division 4 or from 3 into 2 and whatnot. and that's something that you kind of have to take into context. But the benefits of team, like a team, I'd much rather a team building exercise going on the beer for a couple of nights away as opposed to going doing some adventure course. I think you have much better crack when you're out with the lads and a
Well,
few
combine
pints,
the two.
chasing women and having a bit of crack, like,
Yeah.
and the stories then the next day and fellas waking up. Like, but I don't think that happens as much now. Certainly not in season, so.
No, it definitely doesn't. Those
That's
kind.
great. That's great for your off the mark ability chasing women. I like that.
Yeah,
That should be that could
Before
be
I got
all
married, yeah.
incorporated.
The wife doesn't listen. I'm lucky.
That's all in your past. All in your past.
Someone will tell her. Someone will tell her.
Come here, Stephen Campbell has been doing media this week as well, and he says we're all a team of players. Like, he's fairly honest from here, Brendan. And I'll throw this to you as a man who might be able to relate to this. We're all team players, but everyone wants a chunk of the limelight. It's all about burying that ego or whatever it is, and trusting the man beside you, trusting that he can do everything you can do. And here's the question: like, how difficult is it to bury the ego and not want to be the star of the show? Like, you probably would have been the star of Donegal for a good few years, and like, you would have had an ego about how good you were, and maybe you should have taken his advice of suppressing it. You know what I
We
mean?
can only turn back time, really. Oh my God, if we knew now, yeah. Listen, that sounds very like Kieran McGeeney now, to be honest. Maybe Stephen is like Kieran McGeeney, but that sounds so much like a geezer, yeah. I think the limelight, well, he's probably less tied up in the limelight and more tied up in just Armagh having success, which then brings the limelight. I guess if there's massive media around Armagh in a few weeks' time, it means that they've done what they've needed to do and get back into an Ulster final, for example. I think that's probably what he means by that, about getting limelight. But surely, yeah. I mean, I think forward play now, Willie, is all about inclusive. You still see certain players will go for goals or put the head down times, but by and large, it's all team, which then in fact takes the pressure off a star player. You think
Yeah.
about it, well, I remember games getting in there, you're playing in a big match. If you hadn't scored in the first 20, wee bit of pressure started to come on you because before the match you're out in the street, oh, you're going to score today, 1-3, 1-5, this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you needed to get going to get into the game, whereas I don't see that with modern players now. It's players kind of a quiet game. You did your job, you linked up play, you worked back. That's good enough. I think that was something that's brought in huge, and particularly like what Jim did in Donegal. There's no pressure on any of the forwards ever in a game. And looking back at it now, you could have done me a bit of that at times, well, because you were I suppose at times you could be a bit brittle in terms of you knew the game was going against you, and then your I suppose your own ability in the game started to go down. Whereas that's just been a forward back in the day. It was all about confidence and those one-on-one battles, which doesn't happen anymore now. Well, players can loop out on the half forward line, get a good touch of the ball and get into it. If you were starved of possession in the game, you were kind of cold then somebody threw you a free to clip over the bar as if it was piece of cake, So such a different game now from our time.
Well, that's the thing. But even in our time, like, I remember when I'd have a good game. Oh Jesus! Like, I'd buy 3 of the papers the next day, and I'd read about it. I'd be delighted with myself, And
Yeah.
there was no social media, there was no Facebook, there was no online kind of thing. It was just kind of harmless. I don't know. Maybe you can lose the run of yourself a little bit. And I saw Paul Donaghy, who had that brilliant game against Donegal in the first league game, and he hasn't been great since. And he said, to be honest, I sort of tried to block all that out because I know it's only a distraction. And he said you could even see things popping up on Facebook. Like, I'd say I could spend right now, if I was to have a good game, there's enough places to read about your good game. You could be 2 or 3 hours lauding in your brilliant performance. You need a lot of maturity to block that out.
Oh, you definitely do, and the generation that's there now, they've grown up with social media, and it must be incredibly difficult to actually build those habits to not to be checking in on everything that's popping up on the screen. Whereas in our day playing, it was the case of you actually physically had to get up out of the bed, put on your shoes, go down to the shop, buy a few papers. Remember a few good games like that. You would sneakily go in and buy the paper, and you'd be hoping no one would see you, because you don't want anyone seeing you reading about yourself, But I don't know if fellas are buying the paper now, but it must be very challenging. Look, it's a successful setup is, you have to, as a manager, probably looking after 30 odd elite guys. You have to allow some characters will probably enjoy and feed off the positive feedback from the news reports and everything else. But generally speaking, as a rule of thumb, the more energy you put into external cues for how good or indifferent you are, the less beneficial it will be to the team, and then you can kind of get sidetracked. So you're taking your cue from the manager.
There's them old message boards. They still exist. Do you remember them, Wooly? There
Oh
was
yeah,
kind of message
Yeah.
boards, or what do you call them? Remember
The
there was
forums
a
or
few of them.
forum. Yeah, the
Yeah,
online
yeah.
forums.
Forums,
Yeah.
yeah,
forums.
yeah, yeah.
Do you know, I remember my sister saying to me one time, do you ever go on them? And I know by the way she said it, you more or less don't go on them. And I
Yeah.
never have been. I don't even know if they still exist.
Yeah.
But I remember if things went wrong, as you said, well, you would be getting absolutely cut to shreds and that. So I don't even know if they exist anymore, but
My
I'd still
point.
be afraid to go on them.
Well, my point on message boards that my attention was drawn to them before, and I've kind of have the habit now of checking them every
Yeah,
now and
yeah,
then, and
yeah.
like I mean, more for kind of feedback on what people are saying about the show or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
But it's very rarely positive on those things. Like it's always negative, it's always hateful,
Yeah.
because you don't know who the people are, and it's easier to be hateful when you're anonymous. Whereas at least online, most people have their name there, and it
Yeah.
say you're useless or you're bollocks. Like at least okay,
Yeah.
fair play. At least you're showing the world that you've no problem abusing somebody in public,
Yeah.
and people can make their judgment on you
Yeah.
that you might not be that nice of a person. Whereas the message board is a free for all. Like I mean, you're as
Yeah.
well off stay away from them. Just do you have you
No,
want to
but I was going, and it's something I think came up maybe a couple of seasons ago. The GA did do a bit of work on it, and they probably need to keep pushing this out there. Is that you have to remember that these lads are amateurs, and they're going to school or work, or they're not working the next day, and that's their families are looking at these things, and fellas are doing their best. So some of these idiots, as I would call them, on these message boards who are talking absolute rubbish, they have to bear that in mind, that it's another person, human being that they're talking about, and in particular it's a bloody amateur as well. So
Yeah, it's like everyone's desensitized to it. When it's online, you can say what you want without without any
Yeah.
feelings being involved. Not that any of the three of us are very sensitive. One last one on this is that players wanting to get a chunk of the limelight, and it has to be said, whatever Jim Gavin did with Dublin, right? And I'll 100% hold my hands up and say I loved being the star of the show, and if I got interviewed after playing really well, I probably wouldn't bring it back to the team. I'd go, yeah, look, I played well. There was a good point. Do you want to ask me about that point? Or, I'd
Yeah,
be joking. I enjoyed that. But I genuinely believe Dublin are at the point now where when Conor Callaghan says it's about the team, I think that they've brainwashed me into thinking that to believing them, and I think they've been brainwashed as well, that they don't want to be the star of the show at all. That Con doesn't, Kieran doesn't. I say Dermot probably did, but these younger lads, Fenton doesn't. I think, how has he done it, Jared, basically?
It's probably flipped around, and a bit like the example I gave you of fellas drinking pints after Leinster championship matches, to now no one having any points because monkey see, monkey do, and the group and herd mentality that exists. And obviously the manager has to lead that change, and in the same way, guys being put up on a pedestal from Dublin after a solid performance, they're nearly embarrassed receiving the Man of the Match award, and they just want to get over and done with quickly and go through the media duties. But playing for the collective, it's one of the most wonderful experience you can ever have, and that's something I've always talked about when we look at the 2011 game, is that regardless of the results, which was great to win, I actually felt part of a wonderful group of fellas playing for each other, and the results would take care of itself if it was meant to be, and thankfully it was meant to be on that occasion. But so to be part of a squad like that is a wonderful feeling. And maybe the question I'd throw back to you, Wally, is with your life experience now, would you be any different if you were playing?
Yeah. Well, you see, the thing, I always feel I played for the team.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just I did like when I was the man of the match. I enjoyed that.
Yeah,
I enjoyed being the best player on the field. Not saying this happened all the time, but it's not like you're going out, because I wasn't a scorer.
Yeah, yeah.
So my role was to be a team player.
Yeah.
But I still enjoyed.
Getting the plaudits.
It's like Dublin lads don't enjoy getting those plaudits.
Yeah.
It's like it's almost insulting to them that they're getting the plaudits.
Yeah, and because I think fellas are amateur too, and even now we talked about Conor McCarthy a few weeks ago getting 3 goals in the first half. It was the only goal in the league game, and then the second half going away from him, and then he was interviewed afterwards.
Oh
and
yeah,
he was
we talked about
disappointed. Yeah, so it's kind of you don't want to be seen to be getting any bigger than your boots, because the lads will get onto you. But and again, it probably ties in with the amateurism of the game too, that fellas exist and live in the communities, and they're not. hidden away in private estates or private houses like professional sports people are, you know. So,
Yeah. And being cocky, I suppose, isn't something that's
It's a bit boring. Well,
endearing in Ireland.
yeah,
yeah, it's boring. It's boring now.
it is boring, isn't
Listen,
it?
the interviews you've got, like, well, you would have been someone's dream the interview, because you would have got something out of it. You would have got a bit of crack, and you would have maybe give a tongue-in-cheek comment. I mean, everything now has become so robotic, and we'll be back to start the show about Kian and how nice all the Dublin guys were. It just looks like now the collective has just become the complete and utter. It's as if they just belong to one system, and that goes right through everything they do, how they handle themselves, mannerisms. It's as if it's coached to the ultimate level. And now the characters of the game you would always seen, whether they be good crack or fiery or anything, all that's taken out because none of that's helping the situation. It made for, I suppose, interesting viewing, but I even see it with our own club players here, down when I meet them in the gym and that, everybody's got this kind of, the wee kind of cheeky lad doesn't seem to be there. It just doesn't seem to happen anymore. And that's something, I suppose, with sport seems to be coming in more and more, that it's just all head down. And I think what we're on about too, getting out for pints and getting a bit of craziness going, I think that's probably part of the whole same thing.
Yeah, maybe it's all linked in together. Right, lads, we've gone too long there. We'll come back and we'll talk. There's actual games this weekend that we need to talk about. We'll be back. I want to start in Connacht, lads. I think this is the biggest game of the weekend. It's Roscommon and Galway in Dr. Hyde Park. Anthony Cunningham, it's hard to know. You're talking about trying to gauge form. And Roscommon have had a bad league and have had a terrible result against Armagh. And that's coming on the back of a bad result against Mayo last year, where they didn't show up in Dr. Hyde Park. So, they only had that one game, last year in the championship. Now have lost all their league games. And the last one they've lost badly, like 117-11 or something against Armagh, a team that they generally were able to beat or be very close to. It's hard to get away from the fact that you think Roscommon could be on a bit of a slide here.
No, they definitely are on a bit of a slide, and it's probably a huge game for Anthony Cunningham and his tenure there, and trying to turn the players around from a disappointing league campaign will be a huge challenge. Look, he also has a lot of experience as a successful manager too. And
now, just on that, it has to be said that they were relegated in his first year, but that was out of a tough Division 1 like it is now, and they came back and won Connacht that year.
Yeah,
so he can do it.
He can do it, and he will draw from those experiences in order to change the mindset of players. I think what players and a team like Roscommon, who do have a realistic chance of winning Connacht from year to year, he will be able to say to them that, look, the league is boxed off, it is what it is, with a short lead into it. We're working on a couple of new things, but it's all about championship now, and we need to get ourselves right up for this game and leave it all out on the field. And the Roscommon players will definitely raise their performances by a couple of percent each, which will feed into the collective, no doubt. But it's still hard to see. Again, Galway obviously not playing so well either, despite the positive start to Pádraig Joyce's tenure before COVID last year. So they're like two teams in similar kind of situations. Both managers are probably under pressure, but it is a tough ask for Anthony Cunningham to try to rebuild the guys in a short amount of time. But then, if you can't split and box off the league, say it's done and dusted, forget about it. This is a new season now. That was pre-season. Now we're into the real stuff here, and see what response you get from the guys. But it is going to be hard for them, yeah.
Probably will. And Galway beat them obviously in Salt Hill in the league itself. They're playing Fionnan O'Lee as a sweeper, Brendan, which is a bit of a departure. Pádraig Joyce has pretty much, without saying it, said our backs aren't good enough here and they need help. So there's no way he was coming out starting with Galway playing a sweeper. I don't have any problem with him playing the full-time sweeper. He still has some very good forwards up front. Like Comer looks like he'd be back. I think he had a hand injury, which is a good injury in the fact that you'll be able to do all the running and you'll be perfectly fit when you come back. Shane Walsh, they've Matthew Tierney. I think they could play him on the edge of the square. His brilliant mark against Monaghan at the end, and they have Finnerty, who's very good. They've four kind of top-class forwards who'd be looking to keep up, and if they want to defend with the rest of them, so be it.
It's kind of hard to read Galway. Well, you're right, because you're looking at hammering from Kerry, and obviously they dished out the same thing to Tyrone. How teams play against Dublin is very hard to know. Well, because Galway did well in that Dublin game, but what level is Dublin playing at? it's so hard to look into it. Listen, Galway have a brilliant under-20s team there. There's 4 or 5 of them in the panel, and they could have a real tilted all Ireland. So underage coming through, Galway have just so much talent that Roscommon haven't. That said, Roscommon have a very good record against Galway and can always seem to level the match in it. And you're right, going back into this full year now, the only game that's won between the two teams was Galway beating Roscommon. You remember last year, Galway went straight into the final after default because there was a COVID outbreak in Sligo. They're obviously beaten by Mayo. So both teams going on a very very fair form. It's only all Division One clash in that first round, but of course both teams are going down now. So hard to read into Comer's injury, thumb injury. I'm hearing opposite Willie that he mightn't make it. He seems plagued with injuries, Comer, and you think even Comer, even with one arm, that big arm that he has in the hand, he could probably play with one of them. Willie, he's such a different animal out there. What a player he is, Willie. But I just wonder, going into this game, what is the real Galway? The murmurs coming out of them isn't great in terms of training and that. And listen, we've wild time for Joyce as a player and that. I just don't hear good vibes coming out from my friends in Galway, and obviously Roscommon, Stephen Poacher coming in there, maybe to shore up their defence. I think Roscommon will want to make this a bit of a fight and to test Galway's mettle. I think that's what this game will come down to. If it comes down to a fight, it'll be a tricky one for Galway.
I suppose Anthony Cunningham came in to Roscommon, and the first thing he did was play with two forwards and the rest kind of defending. He gave them a harder edge, a little bit like Jim McGuinness coming into, and they were able to win those battles. And now the game is moving away from that, and it's trying to move to maybe leaving a few more forwards up and maybe kicking it a little bit more. And they've brought in Stephen Poacher as a coach, which doesn't really marry with the kind of direction the game has gone. Do you know that kind of way? So the results haven't been good this year. One thing in Galway's favour in the league game, Kieran Malloy man-marked Enda Smith. And no matter how many years you go back with Roscommon or how many managers they have, if you take Enda Smith out of the game, Roscommon just fall apart.
And Smith is a huge part of all that is good of Roscommon over the last number of years. And I would have seen end up close. He was in DCU as well, won a few Sigersons, but a wonderful footballer and a great athlete. But Kieran Malloy, obviously Cora Finn, seen him playing for NUIG as well. A wonderful footballer, extremely fit. And if he is on Smith again, he will break even with him over the course of the 70 minutes. Which will obviously hamper anything that would be good with Roscommon, but it's a funny one for me, and probably listen to Brendan and yourself. But it's hard to call it because you've two teams that are, from a morale point of view, like winning is a habit, and you get good energy from that. And no matter how much coaching or video analysis you do, or one-on-one with players, regardless of who the manager is as a collective, when you win, there's a good buzz that comes from that. Even if it was a brutal performance, just a win is a win. So it's a tough one for Cunningham. He's definitely under pressure, I'd say, to get a result on the weekend. So.
Yeah, the Sean Kelly,
Joyce as well, maybe
Joyce,
under pressure.
They're both under pressure.
If Galway to lose, that could be the end of the road there.
Yeah, I think so. Sean Kelly's a very good man marker for Galway. He'll probably pick up Conor Cox. Mulcairn will pick up Diarmid Murtagh. And because they're playing Fiona Nolly as a sweeper, Dylan McHugh will be able to man mark Kieran Murtagh. Now, they're good matches for all three of your... Kieran Murtagh loves to drop off, and the centre-back doesn't follow him, and he's a very nice player. But I think Galway have all the aces here. I think traditionally they destroy Roscommon in midfield. I think they have those four forwards I mentioned. I don't think Roscommon will have the defenders for them. And I think Galway will probably match up fairly well on some of the Roscommon forwards. So I'm going for a Galway win here, lads. What do you think, Ger?
Oh, I actually don't know, because I like Brendan's point on dragging. If Roscommon can drag Galway into a bit of a dogfight, and Cunningham, the one thing he definitely did bring to them was an edge and a bit of a nastiness with a couple of the guys, which is no harm, certainly from some of their forwards leaving it in late. So I actually don't know, but
go for a draw, Brendan.
Go for a draw, a draw in normal time, right? And who knows after that?
Go for a draw. I'm running out of time here.
You're making a good case there for the draw there, yeah. I'll just go with slight Galway one, Willie. I'm the same as you. I just think the forward line, particularly if Comer does make it, they've got that extra bit of forward. If Walsh has form, if the two of them had form, I just think of something Roscommon don't have in their ranks.
Okay, exactly. Armagh, Antrim, lads, another one. This is a home draw for Armagh. Like, I mean, are we at the stage, Brendan, where we can trust Armagh? Like, I see all these teams trying to make the breakthrough, and they always talk about consistency, and we're trying to get up there. For me, they can't be trusted yet on the back of four good league performances, because the league is the league, and we don't know how the big teams are approaching the league and all these things. The reality is, the evidence we have of Armagh, the most recent evidence, is a complete capitulation against Donegal last year.
Yeah, you don't trust them against Antrim even?
Well, no. Well, I've actually tipped them from Ulster. I'm just being devil's advocate here. Like, you know what I mean? I probably do
That's
trust it.
okay.
But this is a type of game that a Kildare or an Armagh could lose. You know,
Yeah, yeah. You know what, Willie? I think this is different. You know, I hate talking about the journey, but really, if you look at Armagh, the template, I think that's the
that's it.
template that
Hang on
any
now.
county.
Hang on a minute now. The journey. That's a Jim
Well,
McGuinness saying now. He's on a
I
journey.
know
He's on
that's
a
what I
journey.
said.
That's banned
I
on this
couldn't
show.
think of anything else. I couldn't think of anything else. Sorry. No
I'm
more Jim
surprised
quotes.
I'm surprised his book wasn't called Jim McGuinness, My Journey.
Oh, there was some serious quotes in there, right? But you know what, Willie, the time spent together of McGuinney and them lads, in terms of say the template of a county that would down to Division Three, had a very recent great history in terms of winning All Ireland and being in finals and dominating Ulster. To fall so far away, then there was times in that last 7 8 years that you thought it's not working. McGuinney should just give it up, but they've stuck with it and stuck with it. And the players have stuck with it. And you look at the turnover players and Paddy Tally, as we spoke in the last day on about players not committing long term to down, etc. They've committed to Armagh, they've come back, and I think Willie, they are at the stage where you can't trust them. I've just seen enough of them. Willie, I haven't seen them in the flesh. Physically, they're good enough. Midfield, defence, they've got their system set up, and then what they have, as all the top teams have, they have 3 or 4 5 forwards who can all hit. The Neils, Grugan, Campbell. All of them. They've subs to come in as well. There's Herbert like come on, got a goal against Donegal that night. Turbot, sorry.
Turbot, yeah.
They have ability everywhere, Willie, and they have now a bit of momentum coming in as well. I think they've enjoyed playing Division One. They've seen off Roscommon quite easily in that game, which didn't surprise me. Well, they haven't seen them against Donegal for the first 20 minutes of that game. Well, it was 5-1, and Armagh Donegal completely boxed off in terms of everything that they were doing versus what Donegal was doing. You just seen maybe they weren't at the level yet to go and just control the game, which is fair enough because they're an up-and-coming team. But I would be excited if I was an Armagh man. Of course, Eddie McGinley have taken, and Stephen O'Neill has gone in there. Just look at the merry-go-round there of people going into different counties now. Well, obviously Donaghy joined Armagh. Just mentioned Poacher there going into Roscommon. You've Buckley going into Monaghan. The McGivers there, going into Fermanagh to join Ricey at end of McGinley and O'Neill going into Antrim. So everybody's trying to pull in players, particularly the bigger counties that can maybe afford to do it. Of course, Rochford's up in Donegal. You're looking at counties now, the amount of them that are reaching out to grab somebody that can be telling or can make a difference to come into their squad. Obviously Laois taking in hard this year as well. So you have everybody trying to get that wee extra edge. And at the minute, I think Armagh are certainly big contenders for us. And I think they're coming with real freshness. If you look at their neighbours there in Tyrone, there's a bit of a cloud hanging over them. Whereas Armagh, there seems to be a bit of a buzz back. And even that night up in the athletics grounds, there was whatever 500 fans. And, they're real vociferous. They were really getting behind the team. Like, I didn't hear that much noise in Park Esther the next day, which is maybe fair enough. But, there was a real a bit of energy coming behind Armagh. And I think they could be dangerous this summer.
Yeah, there's a sense that they're kind of coming with something. I think Armagh or Antrim's new style under McGinley, where they're playing a bit more football, will suit Armagh, because the last few years Armagh have been very good on the kicking game, a bit like Kerry, but don't like the stalemate situation. I don't think they have enough pace to break through that stalemate, or the patience to do it. Maybe they're getting a little bit better at that. Who do you fancy in this one, Ger? We'll have to move on.
Yeah, Armagh will win because they're playing at a higher division, and the only decent game for me Antrim got all year was their first league game against Laois, which was I think they won by 1 point. But I think the gulf in quality of opposition will have far improved Armagh as opposed to Antrim.
Yeah, I'll go Armagh too. Brendan, Armagh?
Armagh, sorry, Enda McGinley, he's a good mate, but few years work in progress. He'll get them back up, I think, and competitive, but not ready this year, I don't think.
Yeah, exactly. Monaghan, Fermanagh, lads. This is on Saturday at 3:30. You wouldn't give Fermanagh too much hope here, lads, if we're being honest. They were very disappointing in Tullamore, beaten by Offaly. And we saw then Offaly against, I know you can't play this game too much, but, Offaly aren't at top Division 2 team by any stretch. They'll be lucky to survive in Division 2. And, Fermanagh were beaten well in the league semi-final against them. Monaghan, on the other hand, look like a little bit like Armagh, that they've kind of turned a corner into a new style of football. They seem to have options all over the place. Like Desi Ward is man marking now, which I was surprised about. You have McAnespie and O'Connell flying as wing backs. You have Darren Hughes, you have Kearns, and you have Lavelle, all options for midfield. And up front, Jack McCarron coming on, scoring 7 points. McManus is back. Mulligan's a very good young player. They have Kieran Hughes. I don't know where he is. I think he got a black card in one of the earlier games, and he hasn't been seen since. Maybe the management don't particularly like that kind of carry on. Conor McCarthy, they just seem to have they've lots of energy about them, and they introduced the new players, giving them a new impetus, and they're playing a good brand of football. I can see Monaghan probably winning this 7-8 points.
I'd agree with you, if not more, if Fermanagh don't come out with the blocks nice and early and ask questions. It's going to be one-way traffic. I think Monaghan have gotten a nice bounce off Banty going back in. He's kind of rejuvenated things. He had them training hard in the off season, and like most of the good teams, because that's what they have to do. In fairness to them, if you want to compete or get to the next level, so I think Monaghan have just far too much firepower there. I'd feel bad for Ryan McManamon. Obviously, they were afflicted by COVID last year. They had to bring a load of 20s to go and play their game in the championship. He'll no doubt be hoping for a bounce from the guys, but I think there's just far too much quality and strength in Monaghan, and the firepower that Monaghan have as well, and the options then that they have coming in off the bench as well. They could win by double figures for me, double digits rather.
Slight question mark, Brendan, about Monaghan, their half forward line, which is all speed, Stephen O'Hanlon, young Aaron Mulligan and Bannigan, that are kind of small footballery types. And, maybe you could see a case for Darren Hughes being put in there somewhere, just, I don't know, to beef up that line. Or maybe am I trying to be overcritical here?
I think as a game they play, well, you look at Conor McCarthy as well in the round there, in terms of it's quick movement ball.
Yeah.
You've got to play to your strength, and I think they do that.
Avoiding the contact.
McManus, McManus keeps doing his thing inside. I mean, Jack McCarron, last thing. What a strange player he is. Well, I've seen him do unbelievable things in the league. He comes into that game last day and had 7 points in that game against Galway, including a brilliant winner to keep Monaghan in division. Like every year, it was looking like Monaghan might go down. They've clung in. But this year, I was thinking before the season started, I wonder would they be under pressure to stay up? But they have definitely come with a new buzz. Let's be honest. I mean, Buckley's one of the most highly sought after coaches in the country. He's definitely went in and added a bit of jip to him as well. So Monaghan now with them players you mentioned, and you looked at McCarthy in that game against Donegal, and then they didn't need him in that Galway game. So it's not as if they're dependent just totally on McManus now. And they seem to have scores over the pitch. And them young lads have some serious pace that's coming in. Like Donegal had some trouble trying to keep them breaking the lines and getting through players and that. So again, a bit like Armagh, Monaghan are coming in this championship with a real buzz about them, and that's going to really put it up to Fermanagh. It's a real difficult task.
Yeah, and Colin Walsh is back flying in training apparently, and there isn't a wing back spot for him with McAnespie and Carl O'Connell playing so well. Maybe centre back. Drew Wiley apparently is back. They've loads of options now. Like these young lads that have come in have rejuvenated things. They have a bench now, and I don't know. It's mad how 4 or 5 good players coming in from underage it's a third of your team when you think about it. Gerard, it shouldn't be that much of a surprise. You remember Mannion, McCaffrey, Kilkenny and these lads coming into Dublin, and Jesus, turn you from a good team into pretty much an unbeatable team.
And that's where probably Malachy O'Rourke, despite his wonderful success with Monaghan, he probably, for me, went an extra season or two too long.
It was the same team nearly his whole time, wasn't
it? Relatively the same way playing, and when you don't rejuvenate the squad, the older guys get comfortable-ish, even though in their heads they'll be pushing hard, they'll try to improve and everything else and get better. But if there's nobody biting at your heels to get into the team, you just don't go as hard as.
And that's human nature.
That's just human nature. So it's a real positive to bring those guys in, and then, like you mentioned, the energy that those guys bring to the squad. But again, that middle eight we've mentioned before, the game is so fluid and non-linear. It's nearly chaotic in there, that the fast guys, the agile guys, and while these lads might be small in height, they're very strong physically as well, but they are moving the ball on so quick, and they're giving and they're going, and they're coming in at angles. It would be quite difficult to defend them. So unless Fermanagh maybe park the bus and hold them, I don't know, but it's very hard to see.
But Monaghan, Monaghan had a really bad time in Ulster last few years, so it is actually a massive season for them. Since their last championship win was 2015.
Yeah.
Since then, they haven't got near a final. And they've lost. Remember that famous game where Fermanagh, they got done with the last minute goal, and since then they've lost like back to back championships against Cavan and that. So. As much as that Monaghan team should have been in around the house, they haven't been. So this is actually a massive year for Monaghan. I think that's why they're coming in pretty fresh. They really haven't done it at all in Ulster from being the contenders that they were back in the champions in 2015. They haven't got anywhere near even getting into a final.
Yeah, exactly. I think we're all going to go for Monaghan there, lads. We'll move on to the Leinster Championship. Kildare and Offaly, lads. This could be a great game in Portlaoise, O'Moore Park, the home of football. There was only 4 in it last year. I think it was 20 points to 16. Like, you would say Offaly are much better prepared now. They're coming off a league final, which is pretty much championship kind of pace with the nerves, and all those.
Yeah, playing in Croke Park too. Yeah.
Then they're coming off beating a good Loud team, as you know well, Ger, how Loud are solid. After extra time, Kildare are a better team here, but Offaly are much better prepared. So can you see this being closer than 4 points? Or
the only thing for me is 3 tough games week after week. Will Offaly have the legs to sustain the level of performance that's going to be required? The push Kildare, I think they just might fade away towards the latter stage of the game.
We thought that going. I bet you we would have thought that if we were told last Thursday that the game against Loud would go to extra time, we would have all said Loud will win that game.
Well, I would have said that the game against Derry would have brought Offaly further, right? Now we can say that now in hindsight, but
right. But now you're saying one more game is
I think one more game is and look at the normal time of the drawn Offaly Loud game. It was probably the guts of 80 minutes. I don't know how much injury time was actually played, but the way the game is now, there's nearly 3 or 4 minutes each half, and then 2 by 10 minutes. Like, there was 100 minutes of championship football.
Yeah.
Which like, it just no matter how fit you are, the amount of ground that guys are covering is going to take a lot of work and a lot of recovery just to get the mind and bodies right. But I would imagine it'll be a very relaxing week physically on the Offaly players. It'll be just about recovery. Have a look at what Kildare are good at. Now Kildare playing Meath the last day, I got that one wrong. I thought Meath would be psychologically would have too much for the Kildare guys when push came to shove. But in fairness to Jack O'Connor, he's still getting something from the a bit of toughness and steel from the Kildare players, that they were able to stand up. And I know there was a couple of reports of maybe unsavoury stuff after the game, but sometimes you have to do what's required to break through and get over the line, and the challenge for Kildare will be, and for me it's always their challenge because we played them so much, is the inconsistencies that sometimes the Kildare guys can lick themselves after winning a tough game, and to stay up against Meath was a tough game, and will they be able to put it back to back? That is the challenge, but I'd find it hard to see Offaly maintain the level of performance that they put in. If they had an extra week, I'd be somewhat different. But anyway.
Yeah. Do you think, Brendan, this could be a case where Offaly will start this game pretty well because they're more championship ready, but Kildare probably stretch away in the second half? Offaly might tire, and let's be honest, Kildare are a better team than Offaly.
They are, well, and you just wonder how much. I mean, if they were to say, right, this is your last game of the season, surely they can keep it going. It just depends on what's ahead, and the body can keep taking over. You got to remember, of course, the late run into the season. How conditioned are they? If it was normal conditioning, if they had their whole season behind them, I think they'd be okay still at this stage. But they haven't got that, and I think Jer's right, touching on that point now of fatigue for certain players, and of course, extra time is the last thing they needed. Two for me very lucky goals, obviously, in that game against Laois. But listen, they'll take that all day. But I just think Kildare's going to be that extra step up. But I think fatigue's going to start kicking in. You got to remember as well, well, you want to get tactically ready for a team. You want to kind of set traps and get positions in play. Think, right, this happens here, that happens here. So you're trying to do that in a week where you're trying to rest players and maintain sharpness. And It's just so difficult. So everything's looking towards Kildare victory.
Yeah, but they're all doing that. Kildare in the same boat there because we're seeing games every week. Kildare didn't know who they were playing until that game finished extra time. And now Jack O'Connor has to go, right, now we have to plan for them. It's difficult turnaround, especially for leagues. Okay, you might not plan too much tactically. You're looking at lads, you just want to see your team playing well. But the 1 week turnaround in the championship is cruel on managers, really, isn't it, Ger? Like, it's not enough time to be able to get the tape of that match, to be able to sit down and analyse it, to be able to work out a plan, to be able to come to training on a Tuesday night and deliver that plan, and then to do walkthroughs on Thursday night about how you're going to do it.
Well, a general statement here. This what's happening here with Kildare playing, having had 2 or 3 weeks off, 2 weeks I think, and off. 3 weeks, is it?
Three probably.
3 weeks, yeah. It's another example of the inequality of the provincial system, and for me, something that I think we all agree needs to change. But to have our elite competition now up and running, where one team is playing 3 weeks in a row versus against a team that has had 3 weeks off, that's an inequality. But
well, one was a league final that Kildare didn't get to, so like, I mean, or Kildare didn't play. I think they beat Meath.
Yeah, well, I give you that one.
Offaly have only played one game more than Kildare, but I do take your point on the Leinster Championship.
Yeah. But no, look at having a week to prepare for games. I personally wouldn't see it as a major issue that the analysis teams that are there now and you can kind of watch the tape and you can get a few clips together very, very quickly and like Brendan mentioned there, set traps for opposition. And
so you think you can get it done? You could get it done in a week, right?
Oh yeah. You get it done in a couple of hours, really.
Okay. Well, look, I'm not in management. You have been.
I
was panicking about nothing there. Basically.
Yeah. No, you do get it done. I think where the difficulty is again, Brandon was touching on it, probably getting out into the field and
practice
working
it. Yeah.
on those couple of things will be difficult for Offaly now because you can't push the lads. I don't know if Offaly can do any high intensity stuff really for just maybe a small bit on the Thursday for 10 or 20 minutes, and that's all those lads will be able to do, like, you know. So.
Yeah. But the point I'm making is that say Offaly or say Kildare watch Offaly and whoever they watch, and they say, right, next week, Jesus, we're going to have to play a sweeper against them. Now you haven't played a sweeper all, like, we want to surprise them with a sweeper.
Yeah.
You'd like at least a training match with the sweeper, and you might not get it because maybe on training on Tuesday night, but just once, and you're trying to iron out all this. I think maybe that's why GA teams stick with one game plan and play it the whole year without, don't have time to maybe mix and match their game plan, if you know what I mean.
Well, see, it's a short season, right? And Jack O'Connor's in his first year with Kildare, so you do need an A, B, and plan A, B, and to a point C, and probably Kildare may have gone and trained an in-house game on the Monday evening, knowing that they're now playing Offaly, and management would have got enough work done on the tape in the background, and you could easily play a good 40-50 minute solid in-house game on the Monday night, and then the rest of the week you'd probably wind down a small bit, So.
Right. Yes, you might have a walkthrough maybe on a Wednesday just to ram it home or whatever. Anyways, I'll go for Kildare here, lads. Are we all going for Kildare?
Yeah, going for Kildare. And Jerry, I love this. Say you can get a game plan together in 2 or 3 hours. That's you're on another level, but man. You're hot property now.
He's selling himself here, isn't he? Listen, forget about 2 days. I can do this in 3 hours. Come get me,
Brendan. Your time's up. Your time's up, winner.
I'm blessed that I work in UCD, and when the colleges are up and running, I'm very
you're
fortunate.
Free, yeah.
I'm watching a lot of games, and when I'm working and with college being quiet, I'm still watching a lot of games, so you can it's not rocket science for me.
Jerry, you're probably going to team a wee GA nutcases and you just put them into a dark room and assess and analyse. Give it all back to me. You take the credit then.
Yeah. I have them on the earpiece here.
But it does go to show that if you've got a manager who works a very demanding hours on the Monday, for example, and he's in work till 6 rushing to training to make sure he's there before the players, not to look like he's a good work ethic. When has he got time to get the report from the analysts and to have a good thought process for the Monday night? Do you know? It's all right for you. You're a man of leisure during the summer.
And that is a huge thing. And the conversations come up before, like to be a proper inter-county manager, to do your job right, whether it's Division 1 or Division 4, you're putting in a serious amount of time. And as players, and I know the GPA have done a lot of audits over the last number of years with the ESRI as well, and they're doing anywhere from 25 to 35 hours a week, including a bit of travel. Managers are doing more than that again, because you are putting the hard work in the background. So yeah, you do need to be in a position, probably from a work home life balance, to be able to put those hours in, and yeah, that's something that managers you do figure out. And again, maybe it's just me, my Dublin arrogance, I don't know, but I'm very comfortable watching the game or watching the team once or twice. You can see what they're doing, who the better players are, who picks up most possessions.
Yeah.
And it's just about actually trying to the challenge quite often, Wooly, is and as you know, is teaching your players and communicating the message across, and to make sure that they're actually getting it. That, in fact, is actually the bigger challenge, because you have a team of 30 players here, and 3 or 4 of them, like watching the tape, 3 or 4 of them, like practicing on the pitch, 3 or 4 of them just like doing their own research on it and figuring it out, and find the different ways at how your different players learn best, and then communicating in a way that suits them is actually the bigger challenge maybe as a manager. But that's just my experience of it.
Yeah, and you did mention Dublin arrogance. We've analysed that's gone now.
It's gone now.
That doesn't exist
Yeah.
anymore, right? So that's just a thing of the past. Laois and Westmeath, lads, like this is in Tullamore at 1:30 on Sunday. Like, I mean, traditionally this is a 50-50 game. Like, I mean, there's a bit of a rivalry there that the country might know about. I've spoke about it on the show before. It goes all the way back from when we were minors, and we played like 3 Leinster finals, a Leinster final and 2 replays, and we've met each other a lot. And to be honest with you, it's probably breaking about 50-50, but I'd be worried as a Laois fan this year. Westmeath are going much better now. With the Westmeath were in a relegation, but they were very competitive against Meath. Should have beaten Meath. Didn't disgrace themselves against Mayo, who are a top level team at home. They did pretty well, and they scored 25 points against Cork, and they were beaten down by a point. Laois are having a nightmare league. They've lost all games, and they're averaging 12 points. Mike Quirk can't understand it. And I completely understand this. He says training hasn't changed. If anything, has pushed on and become more intense and gone on to a level, and probably have a few more quality players than we did last year, but we just haven't found that spark. And then he kind of says, and maybe he's right in this, he says we'd 3.5 weeks at the start of the league, which maybe we would have been better off if we did like other teams and went back training and taken the challenge games when fellas were ringing me, offering me before we went back training. Lots of managers are referencing this, Brendan, being offered challenge games before you're even allowed train, turning them down, wanting to do the right thing. And Mike Quirk gets a 3-week lead in. Laois can't find the spark. They're off the pace. They're not playing well because he did the right thing.
Well, what he needs to learn there.
What's the lesson? What's the lesson we've learned here?
Take the bloody challenge game would be my thing.
Yeah. Well, that's what it looks like.
I don't know what. Well, listen, there's no point in throwing that in there now. I don't think the performances haven't been a level where they've missed a couple of challenge games. As you said there, they've been well off it. Even Down had 2-19 in them, and that final playoff, that relegation playoff. So listen, there's just nothing good coming into this from them. So at that point, Willie, and we talked about before about systems and teams just coming on and being ruthless and playing. What you're really looking for now is some kind of least championship performance. That's all you have to go on. You're just going to say, here, go out and give it a full lash and hope that players somehow get some inspiration. I mean, many fans are allowed into this. Willie,
500.
Is there a few 500? I was just thinking, is there a clamour for tickets? This is the thing at the minute with teams that are down and out there. You have got to start to inspire and take a scalp. But at the minute for Laois, that I can't see it happening. I see Westmeath have had a decent season, and I think they're going to win this match.
Yeah, Ger.
And yeah, see,
just on that,
yeah.
before you give your in Laois's defence on the down game, and from talking about down game, Laois had maybe 2 or 3 1-on-1s which they missed. They missed a penalty. And Down went straight after the penalty miss, went down and scored. That was a much closer game than the scoreline suggested.
It's like a 6-point swing, really.
Yeah.
I think, but again, listen to Brendan there, and I fully agree with him. Laois now are depending more on hope, and that guys will get themselves up for championship, as opposed to consistency, and knowing that you're going to get X from player Y, X from player Z, and that we can plan accordingly. When you're leaving so much to hope, you just don't know what's going to happen, and it must be very frustrating for Michael Quirk. Then listen to the comments you read out that he's in a second season with him now. That the quality of and again, I know you mentioned that the Laois maybe aren't in as strong a position as they were previously, but you would associate Laois with good footballers, well able to score, and to not be doing that in the league games and having a disappointing league campaign, he's probably pulling his hair out. But it's hard to look beyond Westmeath in the game of the weekend.
Yeah, two Westmeaths. I to be honest, it's just purely I could never ever sleep at night if I tipped Westmeath to beat Laois, so I'm not going to do it. And maybe
You're like Keane with the Dublin hurlers.
I do, yeah. I do accept the hope. It is more hope,
Yeah,
and that there is a
yeah.
performance in Laois, and they're not that bad. And if Mike Quirk is saying they didn't get the work done, while the league performances weren't great, the down performance was probably the best one, and maybe now they've gotten into the legs, and they're maybe primed for this potentially. You don't know, so that's what I'm going to hold out for, and I'll go for Laois in that one. Meath and Longford, lads, in Navan, 3:00 on Sunday. You saw firsthand what Longford are like last week, Ger. Give us your report. I saw Robbie Smith and Rian Brady scored 5 from play each inside. They're left inside on their own, I'm sure, and the rest are kind of working to get the ball in there.
Yeah, so both lads you mentioned did really well, and they were so accurate. In fairness to Longford, I think they had about nearly an 80% success rate, shot to score ratio in the first half. When most teams would be up around maybe 60, Dublin would be a bit higher. So both of those fellas are huge cogs in the wheel. What's his name? Mickey
Quinn, yeah.
Centre back, an awful lot of ball goes through Mickey Quinn as well. He's a super player, but I think from a conditioning point of view, Carlo, our lads nearly caught them towards the end. Longford ran out of a bit of steam. I think a couple of their guys aren't as conditioned as you would like, and I think Meath will just have too much for them. Although Andy McEntee is probably in his fourth season disappointed maybe with how the year's gone, and wants to get Meath up to the next level of it to maintain a Division 1 status and push on in Leinster in the All-Ireland series. So he'd be hoping for a good bounce after the Kildare defeat, but for me, Meath should win comfortable enough by the end of this year.
They took off Smith and Rian Brady, which I was surprised about. And was this a case where they had stretched a bit of a lead and thought about the Meath game, and then you got a couple of goals and then they were worried? Or
no, I think both lads looked to be carrying something coming off,
right?
Because the momentum was slightly coming back in Carlo's favour
when they took them off.
Yeah, we got back to 5 points at that stage as well, and had a couple of other goal chances and nearly could have snuck the win. But those two guys going off, it did reduce their scoring prowess.
So that's a worry for them.
That's a worry for them, yeah. And again, having a week to get the body right for another tough outing against Meath. It'll be a tougher game, obviously, against Meath, obviously playing at a higher division. So I think it'll be too much for Longford to ask, But they'll probably be delighted with obviously winning one championship game and obviously staying up, beating Tipperary in the Division 3 playoff, the relegation playoff. So I think they'd be happy with that,
Yeah, exactly. So we're all going for Meath here, lads, and you're going for Meath as well, Brendan?
Yes, boy.
Okay, and the last one then, Wexford Dublin. Who are we going for here, lads?
yeah.
So that's it. Dublin beat the handicap 24. Will we have a quick one on this? Generally they beat the handicap. 24 is outrageous, right? So will Dublin beat the handicap, Brendan? 25-point win?
Yeah, well, it depends who comes on sub and what we've seen Dublin before maybe keep ball and play it about a bit. Then they inject a couple of people on who want to get a place and want to have a bit of target practice. Goals is what it's all about. Well, again, as the game winds down and they're far ahead, do they keep going for goals? They just take that handy point. If they keep going for goals, if they unleash the bench, they'll take the handicap.
Right, I'd say they'll take it too. I'm very rarely wrong when I tip.
I'll go with you on that one, lads.
Right, sorry, Wexford.
Fail for Wexford, yeah.
Sorry for Wexford, yeah.
Sorry, Wexford is right.
And I apologise to the Wexford players as your fans rush past you to get Conor Callaghan's autograph after the game. So, that's the reality of where Dublin are at the moment. But Wexford will obviously, they'll have had a good year after winning a championship game for the first time in 9 years. Right, lads, that was a marathon show. Loads of games to get through. I think we have less next week. So we'll be back on Monday and we'll review all the 7 games. So we'll talk to you all then. Good luck.